Welcome, everybody. I mean, I've got the best job in the world. I get to go spend money at small businesses, and people love me, so it's great. It's kind of nice. But I have some good news. If you liked what you saw there, one small business owner who's here today is going to get a little special treat from QuickBooks and myself. We're going to do a $3,500 shopping spree at your small business. So stick around. We're going to announce who that winner is after lunch. But I gotta be honest, I'm so thrilled to be here in Chicago. We were traveling around the country putting these on, and someone from the mayor's office called and said, hey, we wanna take care of small businesses in Chicago. Would you ever think about doing it here? And the executive team at QuickBooks said, let's do it. And here we are today. So I'm thrilled to be home. I'm thrilled to be in a group of fellow entrepreneurs. But most of all, I'm thrilled to be in a room full of adults. Let me explain. My sister Karen works for me. I have a family business, and she handles a lot of the speaking events that I do. And my sister Karen has a very hard time saying no when people call. And she recently got a call from a young woman who was part of the Delta Gamma sorority house at Purdue University. We've got some Delta Gammas in the house, okay. Well, they called up and they asked if I would come and speak at Purdue on behalf of the Delta Gamma sorority house. And my sister said, I would love to. And I'm going to be totally honest, full disclosure, I was kind of looking forward to it. I thought I'm going to be the big man on campus, you know, this is going to be great going back to a college town. Well, two of my buddies who live here, they found out I was going and they wanted to come. So we're walking out the door, we've got our suits on, we're heading to the plane. As we're walking out the door, there's my wife, Juliana, and she starts laughing. And I said, honey, what's so funny? She said, well, you know, you guys think you're going to be the big men on campus, but everyone there is going to think you're there for Parents' Weekend. I hate when my wife is right. Because lo and behold, I got there and I'm at the Delta Gamma sorority house, and this young lady came running up to me and she was going on and on how she always watched me on TV in that business competition show and she never missed an episode. And I'm thinking, boy, oh boy, this is great. And then she told me she was in 6th grade when the show was on. So I felt really old really fast. But it got me to thinking that that business competition show that I did was almost 12 years ago. And for me, it was a life-changing event. There's no doubt about it. And I've been very lucky because I've gotten to travel all over the country in different parts of the world. And no matter where I go, people will stop me and they'll always ask me the same question. They want to know if I knew I was going to win that competition show when I first started taping. And I'm always very honest with people. I tell them I had no idea. I was competing with 15 other contestants. We had people from Harvard and Yale and all these fancy business schools. I was just a small business owner from Chicago. And I tell them I didn't know where I was going to stack up in the mix. But I go on to tell them, if you were to ask my mom claimed she knew I was going to win that show when I was 10 years old. And when I was 10 years old, my mom knew that I was born to be an entrepreneur. And it all began on my parents' wedding anniversary weekend. My mom and dad were heading up to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin for the weekend to celebrate their wedding anniversary. And they sent me off to my grandmother's for the weekend. My grandmother lived by Midway Airport. And I wasn't happy about it, but I went, and I woke up Saturday morning, and there was my grandmother in the kitchen, and she was making breakfast. And I was probably like many of you, I was very inquisitive. I would always ask a million questions, you know, what goes here? How does this work? Why are you doing that? So I started inundating my grandmother with all these questions, and she decided she was going to pull me in the kitchen that morning. She was going to teach me how to cook. So I spent 7 hours in my grandmother's kitchen that day mastering the art of making the pancake. I could make a blueberry pancake, a banana pancake, you name it, I could make it. And I went to bed that night, and Sunday morning I popped out of bed and I raced into my grandmother's kitchen, and the first thing I did is I picked up an old rotary telephone, and I called all the old ladies who lived on my grandmother's block, and I invited them to come over for a pancake breakfast. These women loved it. They thought it was the cutest thing they'd ever seen, this kid flipping these pancakes in the air. I was really putting on a show for them. But when they left, I made a rather interesting discovery. You see, when they left, I started clearing their plates away from the table. And I discovered that each and every one of those ladies left a $5 bill underneath her plate. I thought, I'm onto something here. So I did what I thought was perfectly normal. I took that money, I put it in my pocket, and I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say a word to anyone. I didn't want my sisters to get in on the action. So I went home, and the week went by, and Friday afternoon that school bus dropped me off in front of my parents' house, and I went blazing in the front door, demanding that my mom take me to my grandmother's for the weekend. Well, this went on for the next 5 weekends, and my mom couldn't quite understand this new relationship that I had formed with my grandmother. I suppose I should say partnership that I had formed with my grandmother. And then my mom was in my room one day, and I was downstairs, and she was upstairs, and I hear this loud yelling coming from my bedroom, and it's my mom. Well, my mom found a stash of $5 bills hidden in my sock drawer, and she freaked out, as any good mother would, and she sat me down and she demanded to know where a 10-year-old boy was able to come up with all this cash. And I had to fess up I was running a makeshift restaurant out of my grandmother's house. My mom put that business to an end immediately. She claimed I was fleecing these old ladies out of their Social Security checks. But when I look back on that experience in all seriousness, you know, whether I knew it or not at the age of 10, and of course I did, I possessed a trait that is so important in anyone who wants to be successful in small business. And it's a trait that I think everyone here has. That's why you're here. It's having the ability to recognize an opportunity, but more importantly, seizing that opportunity. Most people go through life and they see opportunity all around them. Opportunities to grow their business, opportunities to strengthen their marriage, opportunities to increase their faith. But most people let those opportunities pass them by. Those who truly want to be fulfilled in business and in life reach out, grab a hold of those opportunities, and they do something with them. So that was my start to becoming an entrepreneur. It began with my grandmother in a kitchen. And just to give you guys a little bit of background, I grew up here in Chicago. I grew up in a town called Orland Park. Both of my parents were educators. They worked their way up the ranks, and they started out as school teachers and went on from there. And I worked my way through school. I went to Loyola University with a boat wash and wax business in a town called New Buffalo, Michigan. I would spend my summers up there washing and waxing boats for all these wealthy people. And I got out of college and I took a job for a metals company. And I'd been on the job about 6 months, and I watched a fellow who'd been there for 30 years get fired. And they packed up his office and they walked him out to the parking lot. And I thought, man, this guy had been there for 30 years and they just cut him loose. And as his car drove away from that building, it hit me right here. And I said, I'm never gonna let that happen to me. And I left the office that day determined to take control of my destiny, determined to become a small business owner. And I started networking with everyone that I knew and every business contact that I made in those 6 months working in corporate America. And I searched, and I searched, and I searched. And I'll never forget the first business I looked at, because it was almost my last. My buddy Kyle called me up. He said, Bill, I've got a friend of a friend who's selling a bar on the west side of Chicago. He's relocating. The guy's going to move back to Greece. I think you can buy this thing for a great price. Well, I was thrilled. I said, Kyle, set up an appointment for me on Saturday. I'll be there at noon. And he does. And Saturday comes, and I get in my car, and I'm driving over to this bar on the west side of Chicago. As I'm driving over there, I'm envisioning myself as the next Sam Malone from Cheers, right? Those kids at Purdue had no idea who Sam Malone was. I felt old once again. But in my mind, that's who I'm envisioning myself. And as I pull into the parking lot, my heart drops. Now, my buddy had only given me the address. He had never mentioned the name of the bar. And I saw it as I pulled into the parking lot right above the door. And the name of the bar was called The Aftermath. I didn't know what it was, but probably wasn't Cheers. And I open up the door of The Aftermath, and I meet the owner of this place, and he was the fastest talking salesman I'd ever met. He's got his arm around me, and he's telling me how I'm going to be a millionaire if I buy this place, and it's such a moneymaker. And as we start walking through, I look around, and it occurs to me that The Aftermath was no ordinary bar. The Aftermath was a bondage bar. I'd never been in one of these types of establishments before, and I hope none of you have either. Oh, I saw a guy over here nodding his head as if he'd been there before. I'm gonna watch out for you, Bert. But he's showing me the different contraptions and torture devices that they have, right? And I'm panicked. I'm a 24-year-old kid. I'm thinking, how am I gonna get out of this place alive? So I decide I'm gonna give him the courtesy of a walkthrough, you know, just go through the motions. And he says, Bill, I'm gonna take you to the real moneymaker here. And he brings me down into what they call the dungeon room.
Oh my goodness.
And I'll never forget that moment, because I looked over at this fella and I said, sir, I really want to be involved in a business where my family can help me. so sure my 65-year-old mother's going to want to work the dungeon room at 4 in the morning on a Friday. But I kept searching. I got out of there alive, obviously, and I kept searching and searching and searching, and about 6 or 7 months into my search, I was sitting at this outdoor cafe, and these 3 European guys sat down at the table next to me, and they pulled out these huge cigars. They were smelling these cigars, and the way they were lighting these cigars, it was like a bolt of lightning had struck down and given me this idea.